Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So good to see newer people. Welcome. Welcome back. So today I am talking about the discipline of relationship. And I got this looking at training in compassion. Wonderful. I think, Chris, you talked about this one time. Yes, a couple of times, yes.
We could talk about it hundreds of times.
Yes, it is an ongoing project, isn't it? And it's from this great book called Training in Compassion by Norman Fisher, a Zen priest in the Suzuki Roshi lineage. And it's based on the Tibetan Lojong training, which is all about compassion, how to be a compassionate person, how to awaken the heart of compassion, bodhicitta. So I was looking through this book and I saw the discipline of relationship. I need to read up on that one again. I need a reminder about that. And I've had this book out also, Magnolias All at Once. And it is poetry by Norman Fisher. I've been meaning to bring it down to the Friday poetry group, which we have right after morning sitting at 7. You don't have to sit. If you want to just come to the poetry, it's great. But I can tell you, after sitting sometime and then reading and listening to poetry being read, it's really just a wonderful experience, really. And people bring poems and they share and they read. Sometimes we have different people read the same poem and it's interesting to hear it in another voice. Anyhow, I've had this on my table and I haven't really opened it. So this morning I said, let me look and see what Norman has here in his book of poems to begin. So there's a beautiful one here. An ancient Buddha said, for the time being on a mountain peak, for the time being on the ocean floor, for the time being furious as a demon, for the time being serene as a saint, for the time being brilliant as a Zen master, for the time being dull as a stone, for the time being a completely ordinary person, for the time being earth, sea, and sky. Oh, so beautiful. So this past week, starting from last Saturday, actually Friday night, the big rally down at Daley Plaza in support of immigrant rights has been quite remarkable, speaking about the discipline of relationships. So on the Friday night before the rally, when I was lying in bed, I noticed that I was feeling very sad, very sad. And then I started thinking about my grandfather, because on Saturday at 9:30, there was a Japanese American and Asian American rally at the Cultural Center right before the 11 a.m. Daley Plaza rally. And so I said, I'm going to that. Never again is now, has been their motto. Never again the internment camps during World War II, which my body was starting to remember on Friday night that my grandfather, innocent, my maternal grandfather was taken. the FBI showed up one day at his home, gave him 2 or 3 hours to pack up his stuff and say goodbye to his family. He had 9 children and my grandmother, and he was shipped off to a camp first at the Kilauea Military Center, Kilauea Camp, military camp up at Volcano. And then from there he went to Oahu, Sand Island, where they had more people. And then they decided, I guess, that toward the ocean, I don't know, there was a higher risk of, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, they brought all of them to the interior of the island, to Honouliuli Camp, which I hear conditions were not very good. It's like this dusty gulch in the middle of the island. And he died there 9 months later. He had written a letter to my grandmother saying, you know, wonderful things, just thanking her for being such a wonderful wife. And he thought he was going to get out of there at one time, but he had the feeling that he was not going to make it. And he had an aneurysm and died there. So it was like his last will and letter to her. Anyhow, I had forgotten about that, but then I started to think my grandmother, I was just really sad. And then, you know, I was like, okay, I'm just going to be with this sadness, you know, just kind of feel it, lying in bed. And then pretty soon I fell asleep. And then the next morning, you know, we took the L over, and as we got off the L at the stop right by the cultural center, and as we started walking, I saw the group of Asian Americans. There was about, I don't know, 50 or so, maybe more there, and they were like chanting, and they had the taiko drums, and they were drumming. And all of a sudden, this just deep grief just welled up in me, and I was like surprised because, you know, I thought I never really grieved my grandfather. I didn't know him. You know, he died before I was born. And here we were with all these Japanese Americans and other Asian Americans, and they're like, never again is now. They're like, really, and I just felt, I guess, my body felt safe. I was with people who understood what had happened. And I mean, I couldn't speak. I was crying. I could not speak. I saw friends there. I could manage to say hi, and that was it. I had to not. I couldn't speak. And then we walked to Daly Plaza, and we were one of the first groups there. They wanted to be one of the first groups there. And I remember thinking, oh, there's not many people here. And then we were early. And then there was another group who came. They were like Hispanics or Latinos, and they were like chanting. It was like, yeah, and it was that feeling of, oh, there are more people here to support. And then then the plaza just was full of people. I know MG was there. I saw her picture. I didn't see her there. The Tribune said 5,000 to 10,000 people, but I'm sure there were more. MG had a great, she had made this like jail thing that she was holding, you know, with bars, and she was walking like this. It was great. What a great sign that was.
It was more, it was a box, it became a box.
A
So it was
box.
3D.
Yes, it was really, and she was carrying it. She was on the inside of this, you know, bars here. It was fabulous. So that was a fantastic rally. There was, on the southwest corner, we knew that there were going to be Buddhists sitting there, and it was Ancient Dragon. They had about 10 members of their Sangha there, maybe a little more. So Roshi and Mark, Shishin Galula, and I, we met up there, and then we sat there with them. And it was really quite nice to sit there. And I was thinking, next time there's a rally, we should all go down and sit.
Yeah, I sat too.
You did too. Yeah, you were there, Eve. Yeah, right. And the police were there, and it was just really a calming presence. But the whole thing was very, the feeling, the police were smiling. It was a really family kind of oriented rally. It really felt good. There was no fear or anything, and that was really wonderful. So that was Saturday. And then on Sunday, I also knew on Hawaii Island, on Monday, the big 30-meter telescope had finally gotten approval to commence by the state Supreme Court, because there was a legal thing happening. But the state Supreme Court voted, there was just one person who was against the building. But I think one of their main contentions or reasons were that, there were already 13 up there that has somewhat damaged the pristineness of the mountain. What's one more? That was a reason that they said, what's one more? Also, the TMT is the first of the 14 telescopes that says they will pay rent on the mountain of up to $1 million a year. All the rest have been paying $1 a year for being on the mountain. And the University of Hawaii has been managing this. So they have been really mismanaging this conservation ceded lands, which ceded lands, illegally taken, I think, is more like it. And I'm trying not to be so one-sided here, but as you can see, I have a bias, and you'll see I'm going to be talking about training and compassion where, you don't want to favor one side over the other. You want to be somewhat balanced here. However, it seems like you also have to take some stands in life and do the best that you can, in terms of articulating why you feel the way you do. And still, even though you heartily disagree with someone totally, there can still be kindness. And that is what a group of Hawaiians who have been fighting this all along, they are doing civil disobedience and blocking the road so that the equipment cannot go up there. And that started Monday. This past Monday was the day that the governor said they were closing the road to everybody except people who work already up there on the telescope. That nobody else can go up there except those big trucks for safety reasons. So the Native Hawaiians were, really kind of incensed about this because they have their religious practices. To them, the top of the mountain is very sacred. It is the place where their origin stories began, where Wakea, the Sky Father, and Papa, the Earth Mother, came together and formed the different islands. So it is really a place of origin and stories and religious significance for the Native Hawaiian people. So on Monday, and I've been following this on Facebook this whole week, there were about maybe 300 people there, and they were, nonviolence was their mode of operation, and they call it kapu aloha. Kapu meaning sacred, aloha meaning love, compassion. So they're working, everyone there was trained and continued to be reminded about this basic principle. And they also established a pu'uhonua at the base of the mountain. And a pu'uhonua is a place, a sanctuary. that anyone can come to feel safe, to heal, to take care of yourself and of each other. And so they're operating from this deep principle of sacred compassion for self and for other. And they're blocking the road. So for the first 2 days, I think that the governor and the police force really didn't know what to do. They were silent a lot of the times. The police were there. The leaders were talking to each other, but they were saying, the road goes through Hawaiian homelands, so the road the state has jurisdiction over, but the land is Hawaiian homelands that the road goes through. So they've been talking and nothing happened, and the elders, about 40 elders, were seated across the road. And so on Wednesday, the local police kind of, they're all related. It's an island, and so they just, nothing happened. The third day, the governor had sent over Hawaii police from Honolulu. They're kind of tough guys, and they're, not related. And so they actually arrested 33 of the kupuna, of the elders, and one caregiver, because these are like 80, 90 years old. Some were in wheelchairs that they had to cart up, and they all went willingly, and everybody was silent. That was very powerful. One person was saying, "This is wrong, this is heva, this is wrong. You shouldn't be doing this," but everybody else, we were in kapu aloha and silence. That's quite powerful. So they took them all in the vans, and of course, this just kind of galvanized support on all of the islands. And now, this whole week, there has been more and more people have been coming to the site. I think there are over 2,000 people now. And so this is a big job to, they got porta potties, they have to get the trash out, and they're telling people, there's 7 rules. You cannot drink, you cannot smoke. Please take care of yourself, take your trash with you. They're really trying to be stewards of the land. So anyway, all of the islands are having protests and saying, this is wrong. How dare you arrest our elders? In Hawaiian culture, elders are very esteemed, respected. And after they arrested the elders on Thursday, they were back, the police force and secured the Department of Land and Natural Resource. And the women, there were 90 women who locked arms across the road. So it was several lines, and there's evidently a way you can lock arms and be very, it's hard to break it apart, break people apart. So they did that, 90 women, and they were singing and they were chanting, and they were not arrested. And there's kind of been a standoff now. And people have been coming to support, and they've been doing protocol, Hawaiian chanting, hula even. But they've been reminded, this is not a party. This is serious. You have to be maka'ala, alert to what's going on. And they've heard that, that LRAD, what they used at Standing Rock, these sound cannons, there were a couple of them there. So everybody was very concerned about everyone's safety. And even the governor was concerned, but he did declare a state of emergency for all these peaceful protesters, which gives the police a little bit more leeway on how they can operate. So, this training in compassion, it's so important, I think, in this kind of tense, yet people are standing up for what they believe in, and getting support all over. Even in Las Vegas, there's a big Hawaiian population. They had a big rally as well. So on Monday also, I go to the jail every Monday with Ruth Rankin, Donna Mindrum, and Lisa McKean. And this day, on Monday, we sit for about 15, 20 minutes. This is Tier 2L. This is the group of women who are there for good behavior. And if they're there, so it's kind of like the cream of the crop, but about 20 women. And they get programs as a result, like the meditation. We've been going there weekly for, about maybe a year now. And so we sit. Ruth did a very good job just introducing, because there's a few new people there every time, what meditation is, mindfulness, how it's helpful to you. And then after the meditation, we get comments, and the women were saying how much it's helped them tremendously. And about a week ago, there were some people who were making noise. We sat for 20 minutes, and there were people kind of disrupting. And the women were saying, we heard the noise, but we know that when we get out, it's going to be just like this. So we just kept, I just kept going with I didn't let it bother me. And it was just really great. And this last time, one of the women, she said she just really appreciated us being there. Because she said, there are other groups who come, and most of them have grants, or they're being paid to be there, but you guys are just volunteers. You want to be here. And so they really appreciated that. So I've been also teaching them a little hula, little movement, and they've been enjoying that. And so we did a little hula. And then they said, we want to see a hula. We want to see you hula. I said, okay, I'll be happy to. So I started, I thought, well, the good hula to do would be Make Strong, which was written by Havani Rios, and her family is one of the key organizers of this civil disobedience. So I started telling them about what's going on the Mauna, on the mountain. And as I was telling them, I got kind of emotional and just started, crying again. I was just like, oh my God, I can't even, but anyway, that's what it is, trying to just be with what is. And they were like so supportive, as I think, they really understand. They're oppressed people. They understand. They go, oh no, good for them. They're just being, great. And I said, well, the TMT is going to give $1 million in rent, and they have another $1 million for scholarship, and they go, oh, that's just blood money. I'm so glad they're standing up for what they believe in, And this is the earth, right? They're standing for the earth, for some pristine, leaving the mountain as it is instead of, right, building an 18-story building with a 1.5 acre footprint of the actual building within a 5 acre. And they have to go in pretty much as deep as they're going up into the mountain. So, I think this practice of compassion is so very important, and I'm so grateful to Norman Fisher for writing this up. So I'm going to start in on the discipline of compassion. So what we teach here through our Foundations for Mindfulness classes is that you can change your brain. All right, you can, but it's going to take a little bit of effort. All right, it's kind of like, if you want to develop some muscles, you just can't read about it, how to develop muscles, right? You're going to have to work at it. Repetition is a key here. It's the same thing with training your mind. I know we think, how can that be? Well, it's true. So, and our mindfulness is not, just how to become a better consumer. But really, it's a deep spiritual practice because it's not so easy to do. You really have to practice and develop patience for sitting there and just noticing what your mind does and trying to work with your judgment that comes up every time, right? And just having faith that if you really want to be clear, open, I forget the third one. If you want to be, practice is the key. Practice is a key. Empathy, okay. Clarity, empathy, and openness. Thank you. So, we suffer, right? That's the first, the inescapability of suffering. We're remembering these four preliminaries that help us to come back to what is really important. First is the preciousness and rareness of our human life, right? There's only one you. The chance of being born human is pretty slim when you think about all the bacteria and all of the, they say, right, it's like the chances of a turtle sticking his head up in a life preserver in the great Atlantic Ocean. That's the chance of us being born a human. And that we are all going to die. And suffering is inescapable, really. It's how we work with it, though, right? It's how we work with it. And also, how Norman puts it, the awesome and indelible power of our actions. The awesome and indelible power of our actions. So what we do matters. And if we do it regularly, something will happen. And if we don't do it regularly, something else will happen. So one of the main causes, or maybe it is the cause of suffering, is this self that we have constructed, right? Our ego. And, it's a natural thing to be self-centered. I hate to say it that way, but it kind of is, right? It is. We have to survive, right? But if we can kind of liberate ourselves from this self-centeredness and really love and connect with each other, that means we have a lot of work to do because it ain't easy, right? It is not easy. So, we have to be serious about this mind training if we really want to connect with others. And compassion isn't just about others, it is also about ourselves, ourself. So this whole book, there's kind of a step-by-step. First, to do this, you have to have resolve and motivation to do this. And if you've suffered a lot, that usually is one key in helping you with your resolve and motivation. So suffering has a purpose. And that's the point one, resolve to begin. And we can do this again and again. So that you firmly take up the training. And that it's time to get serious about your life. And being serious means getting over your old habit of self-obsession. And which in turn means developing genuine empathy and compassion. And so to really embrace compassion and receive others, you have to be willing to work with pain. Oh no, really? All right. That's training in empathy and compassion. Mm-hmm. So, so it becomes clear to you that you have to be ready for difficulties because they will arise. They will arise. So this practice is helping you train to be ready for difficulties in your life, to be able to handle them in a more skillful manner. And then you see that bad circumstances that happen to you is really the path. It's no escape from your life. And then the point 4 is about, this is all practice. Make practice your whole life. At least questioning, why are you distracting yourself? That's something. Just noticing, oh, I'm distracting myself. From what, I wonder, right now? Make practice your whole life. That's point 4. And then there's being able to encourage yourself while you're on the path, not being so hard on yourself so that you won't veer off. So it's just kind of being a light touch. You're working with your own mind, gently is good. So then this discipline of relationship, okay, so how does it relate to how I'm relating to people, which is such an important thing for us to be connected, and yet one of the hardest things to do. So, one of the problems is when we project how we wish others should be, right? Instead of actually seeing how they are. So dealing with others isn't just about dealing with others. It's dealing with yourself, dealing with others. Okay. Because, right, there are no others apart from us. We're so interconnected here. There's no difference. Our problems with others are problems with ourselves. And vice versa. So that's what these slogans do. They train us, and there's about 18 of them, they train us to take ourselves in hand so that we can be different in our interactions with others. And gradually we learn that when we're different, others are different too. It may take a lifetime, but it happens for us to learn and, to really practice this.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes.
That may be true. Systems theory says that when anything in the system changes, that everything in the system changes. And it's also true that when I take myself in hand, I begin to think differently. Even if that other person doesn't change, my relationship or my perspective or my view of things changes in some way that is helpful.
Yes.
So even if they don't change, I work with it differently.
Yes. Right.
And
That's really important. You're dealing with yourself, dealing with others. Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I talked briefly about the coming back to basics. That's the first slogan in this discipline. There are 3 points. The first one is taking up this commitment to train your mind, and to help you. Remembering those 4 preliminaries about the preciousness and rarity of our lives, about the absolute inevitability of death, the inescapability of suffering, and the awesome and indelible power of our actions, working with ourselves. So those, coming back, that's the first point. The second point is, don't act outrageously. Outrageously. And in India, one thing that they shouldn't act, an example of acting outrageously was peeing in the river, chopping down trees. I mean, today it could be, tossing garbage out of your car. And what else could it be? An outrageous action.
Well, there are kinds of outrageousness. I've met people in Denmark that were using clowning as a form of protest.
That's a good one, I think. Yeah. That's a good one. So that's a little bit.
It's a good way of being outrageous.
Right. Well, this was outrageous in a sense that would be detrimental. Yes.
At college, my son is going off to college, and one of the most outrageous things I heard was that there was a trend for college students to drink so much that they're passing out.
Yeah.
And that was the point of the intoxication, was to black.
That's outrageous.
That to me is outrageous.
Yes, it is outrageous. Yeah. And then the other point was, don't be one-sided. Don't favor the people you like versus the people you don't like. Now that's a practice right there. Yeah. We're all one body. Like in hula, I say when, we're practicing the lele step, we're trying to really shift our weight equally to each foot. We're not favoring one foot over the other because it's really one body. And we want to be equal. Yeah.
The anniversary of getting out of the moon and everything?
Oh, yeah.
The astronauts, when they took the first pictures, they just realized how it's just one planet.
Yeah.
It's all just one.
Well, that to
Yeah.
me, that was the most important thing about the moon mission.
Yes.
Was the view we got of
Yes.
the planet.
Right. So the second slogan is, don't be a phony. You don't have to impress yourself or anyone else for that matter. So you can relax. Take a moment and think. You know, how are you? How are you in the forest? Right? And how are you at your job? Why should it be different? Don't be a phony. That's a good one. Okay? The next one is, don't talk about faults. We have that as one of our precepts too. Don't talk about faults. Try it for a week. You know, if somebody is acting badly and you're talking about it in a harsh way, it's only going to make the situation worse. Right? And this is the one about, it was stated in Tibetan, don't speak about injured limbs. You know, if somebody is injured, you know, or they have some kind of disability, they can't see, you're not going to talk bad about that person, that they, you know, have a stump of an arm. Don't speak of injured limbs, so you're not talking about people's faults. The next one is, don't figure others out.
It's one of my favorites. Good job on that.
Right? So, I mean, Norman would say, who could ever understand another person? We have a hard enough time understanding ourselves, and yet we think we can understand somebody else. Right. He says, if it's hard to fathom ourselves, how can we seriously believe we can figure others out? So, and he says, to be sure, there are some times that may be a good idea to try to imagine what someone else is feeling or needing. We do that in our nonviolent communication, or wanting, but in light of this slogan, we really do it with humility, knowing that we could be wrong. All right, don't figure others out. Just remember that, all right. These are such great reminders, you know. The next one is, work with your biggest problems first. Usually you want to do all the small things and save the big one for the end, but by then you're all exhausted by all the small things that you did. So just work with your biggest problems first. The next is abandon hope. And Suzuki Roshi says, you know, to practice without a gaining idea. You know, that's our grasping, right? Our grasping. We're practicing because we want to be really spiritual. Really spiritual, or really, you know, something that is it, whatever it is, right? So that's a gaining idea, right? We're practicing without a gaining idea. You know, it's not a self-improvement thing. We're not practicing to self-improve. We think, you know, one of the side benefits that happens after we meditate is that we are more grounded. You know, that does happen. But we're not going to practice because, you know, that we want to be, I don't know, you know, we want to be Miss Guru. Right? Anyway. So that's important, I think, because we do say that in our foundations class, you know, If you're here because you want to be, if you want to, well, if you're practicing for any reason other than just for itself, there's something fishy about it, and that you might be very disappointed because it's an unrealistic expectation, really. So you're practicing just for the sake of practicing. That's what we say, sitting on the cushion is enlightenment itself. You are embodied, you are enlightened, that's why you sit. You don't sit to become enlightened. You are already there. Abandon hope. And he says, eventually practice disappears as a self-improvement vehicle. And that the only important thing for you is to live your life. Live your life fully, which means continue your mind training. Just continue. The thunder gods are talking. What was that? Abandon hope. All right, the next slogan, don't poison yourself. That is a real, stop poisoning yourself with self-concern. And so what that means is when you notice instances of self-criticism, discouragement, pride, remember this slogan, don't poison yourself. Those are all ways to poison yourself. And of course they will come up, it's natural, so you just notice it. And you don't have to hang on to it, though. You can just go, okay, there it is. I'm feeling discouraged. Okay, and I'm going to come back to my breath right now. Oh, there's a story, about how unworthy I am. Okay, I see it. I have the feeling. Okay, all right, I'm just going to breathe, come back to my breath, kind of settling, kind of refocusing. So the goal is not to eliminate those thoughts or feelings from happening, but rather to practice this slogan, don't poison yourself. To know what those attitudes are and to stop eating them. Because you're poisoning yourself. So don't poison yourself. All right, the next one is, don't be so predictable. Don't be so predictable. When we do mind training, there is a freshness, an openness that happens. We see this during retreats. At the end of retreats, it's really kind of amazing after a long period of sitting, of this kind of sense of humor that comes up. It's so it's different than our usual mode of operation. It's just different. And the reason why we're so predictable is because we're fixated on this self we've created. We've created over time. We kind of, and not only us, but everybody else we come into contact with has helped us create who we are. And he gives the example, if you're a person who gets angry a lot, can you just notice the anger arising and the things that trigger it. You can just notice that. And then now that the anger has arisen, what do you do with that energy? Don't be so predictable. Try something new. Clean your house, clean your room, whatever. Try something different with that energy. So remember, there are many possibilities. In the beginner's mind, many possibilities. In the mind of an expert, few. The next slogan is, don't malign others. And I think that's similar to talking about others' faults. This next one, don't wait in ambush. That's a really good one. Don't wait in ambush, which means don't hold a grudge. I've done that. It's not useful. It's really not useful. It's very violent, actually. Violent on yourself, violent when it comes out. So what he's saying on this, don't wait in ambush. If somebody does something hurtful to you, don't hold it inside, and nursing it, right? Nursing it, waiting for the moment that you can leap out, and tell them a thing or two. Because all the time that you're lurking, you're not practicing. You're losing your practice and the opportunity to learn from your pain. And open. You're missing that opportunity. You're just lurking, lurking in the bushes. I know, because I've done that. So, So you don't look for revenge. If you have an enemy, you want to try to engage, if possible, if it's possible. And that's right there, that's hard. To have the presence of mind and working with the emotions that arise when you're confronting or speaking with someone. That's very difficult. But if you can, kind of express how you're feeling, and that's our nonviolent communication is so helpful, and what you're needing, perhaps something can happen here instead of the lurking. Don't wait in ambush. See, these are all lifetime practices here, lifetime slogan practices. The next one is, don't make everything so painful. Don't make everything so painful. So if something is bad, don't make it worse. It's kind of like the second arrow, right? The first arrow is really bad, and don't push another arrow by elaborating on somebody's faults, and it just makes things worse.